Urban farming and gardening are popular, and research has shown that growing food in the city has social, environmental, health, and economic benefits for communities. But we've heard concerns that fruits and vegetables grown in city soils, or the soils themselves, are dangerous. The Safe Urban Harvest Study, a project of the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, set out to answer these questions in Baltimore City. We partnered with the Farm Alliance of Baltimore, the Parks and People Foundation, the Baltimore City Office of Sustainability, and the University of Maryland Extension Baltimore City to design and carry out the study. We recruited 104 farms and gardens in Baltimore City to participate in the study. We surveyed each one to learn about their growing practices and then sampled their soil and the water they use to irrigate plants. We also collected fruits and vegetables from 69 of the farms and gardens. We tested all of the soil, water, and fruit and vegetable samples for heavy metals, including lead and arsenic, at laboratories at Johns Hopkins and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The results of these tests are good news for farmers and gardeners and for people eating urban-grown food. Now we'd like to tell you what we found.
There aren't universal safety standards in place for heavy metals in soil or in irrigation water on urban farms and gardens. Also, acceptable limits for heavy metals in fruits and vegetables have not been established. So in order to make sense of the results, we developed rigorous standards to use that are protective of public health. It's important to recognize that it is normal to encounter heavy metals in our daily lives, so some exposure is nothing to panic about. At the same time, it's good to minimize your contact with heavy metals whenever feasible. We hope that the findings can help farmers and gardeners make the best choices about where and how they grow food in order to keep themselves and their consumers as safe and healthy as possible. Since there currently aren't federal guidelines for metals in irrigation water, we compared the results to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's drinking water standards for everyday consumption. The results are promising. The irrigation water at the vast majority of farms and gardens has levels of metals in compliance with drinking water guidelines. There were a few sites with elevated lead, most of which was in rain barrels. We helped the farmers and gardeners at these sites identify the potential cause, such as nearby renovation or demolition, or buildup of metals in the pipes over the winter.
When it comes to soil, we wanted to figure out if Baltimore's farmers and gardeners faced elevated health risks from regular contact with metals in urban soils. Without standards specific to soils in urban agriculture, we decided to use standards developed by the New York State Department of Health for residential soils. We are happy to report that across the 104 farms and gardens, the average levels of metals in soils used to grow food were all lower than the New York State standards for arsenic, barium, and cadmium. At 4 sites, the average lead concentrations were higher than the New York State standard, which is 400 parts per million. At those sites, we worked with the urban farmers and gardeners to identify the source of contamination or test in more detail. We also found elevated levels of chromium at about half of the farms and gardens we tested. While this may sound scary, there is a silver lining. Some forms of chromium aren't toxic for humans. After further analysis of the samples, we are confident that the chromium we measured in Baltimore's farms and gardens is the non-toxic type and not of concern. To be clear, we aren't worried about the chromium we found in soils.
Of course, one of the most frequent questions we hear from consumers comes down to the produce grown in Baltimore gardens. Is it safe to eat?
We sampled a total of 649 fruits and vegetables. 248 of these came from urban farms. We got the rest, including both conventional and USDA certified organic, from local grocery stores and farmers market vendors for comparison. We didn't find any differences in the levels of contaminants between urban grown produce compared to the same items from grocery stores and farmers markets. Eating fruits and vegetables, no matter the source, is an essential part of a healthy diet.
If you are concerned about potential metals exposure in urban agriculture, the best way to reduce your exposure is to reduce your soil contact. This is because the concentrations of contaminants are much higher in soils than they are in produce. There are also many other simple and effective ways to reduce your exposure to metals in urban agriculture. Check out our best practices video for additional tips.
So, after 3 years of intensive research, what do we know about urban agriculture in Baltimore City? With rare exceptions, we found that Baltimore farmers and gardeners can continue growing food safely. Based on the findings, as long as urban farmers and gardeners in other cities test their soils for heavy metals and follow our other tips for best practices, we expect them to continue growing safely as well. And, for consumers, It's generally just as safe to get your fruits and vegetables from a farm or garden in Baltimore City as it is from a grocery store. Eating a diet rich in a variety of fruits and vegetables is good for you, and when you incorporate produce from urban farms into your diet, you're also supporting your local community too. You can find out more about all of these benefits and specifics about the research process at our website. Thanks for watching, and happy growing!